welcome you along with the other organizing committee members, and we're pleased to collaborate with Dar al Islam on this wonderful initiative and for the support that they're providing to us, to all the organizations, and to the efforts that we'll put forth today. It's a historic gathering that we're having here today, and it's been a long time coming. The Muslim community as a whole, I feel, is at a point of readiness to begin working collectively towards a streamlined community response.
Domestic violence may happen to individuals and may happen between family members, between partners, but there is this larger picture that is important to hold because domestic violence is really a form of oppression. And for us to really think of how to work on dismantling and addressing and preventing domestic violence within our communities, we have to hold an understanding that it is informed and maintained by these different forms of oppression. And as an organizer around domestic violence and going out in the community, I would say, let's talk about healthy communities. And meanwhile, folks were dealing with raids, anti-immigrant sentiments, and those are more substantial to them than what a healthy community is. And so how can we bring these conversations in our communities which really talk about domestic violence in a way that also acknowledges the different forms of violence that people negotiate every single day? You know, Muslim women have to carry the burden that they are protecting the identity of the community every time that they don't disclose that they're experiencing violence. Because to disclose violence, they're perpetuating, or they feel like they're perpetuating this notion that Muslim communities are violent. There are multiple approaches to addressing domestic violence, and I'm so thrilled that even in this room there are folks from so many different types of spaces that work on dismantling domestic violence. So there's the community level, and Peaceful Family Project is here. All of you engage in activism and advocacy. And then you have local and state government approaches. So folks like Anzala, who are from the New York Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I work at the California Coalition. Then there's also local policy, like working in the schools to make sure that education talks about gender and gender just education. Then there's national organizations. Yasmin is on the board of the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And then we have Islamic and Islamic law and jurisprudence. So there's like Karama, Peaceful Family Project works within the context of Islamic, like an Islamic perspective on addressing domestic violence. Then we have organizations that work on cultural shifts, like Alt-Muslima, which sparks people's curiosity and really kind of puts out articles that get people thinking about gender in different and new ways.
Here's our approach. We're working in one neighborhood of Dorchester. It's a community of 20,000 people. And within that geographic community, we're working with 3 specific constituent groups: youth, local adult residents, and organization leaders. Within those constituencies, there's incredible ethnic diversity and economic diversity within Fields Corner. And I have one colleague who's doing some deep work within the Vietnamese community as well. And so you can see we're defining community in many ways with great intention, because I think that allows us to engage community members with much more effectiveness. And this is the process that we use. And again, this is a process that's emerged over time, because we really believe that creating social change is a process, not an event. The first step has been for us to always continue to assess the community, to deeply, even though I've lived in this neighborhood for 15 years, communities, neighborhoods are organic, changing entities. And so always kind of having a finger on the pulse of what's going on. So ongoing community assessment to really understand the norms, the values, who are the community leaders. Engaging community members in talking about these issues, so having conversations about it. And through the assessment and talking process, we begin to recruit community members, and then also begin to define solutions that community members want to implement. And then once we define those solutions, we then begin to build community members' skills together around what those might be. And then finally implement projects, which is to take action. Here are some examples of other ideas that community members came up with that they thought would be impactful to create change. Helping family and friends. Bringing issues into the public space, so how do we deal with this silence and the denial around it in a way that's supportive And so we did a lot of skill building around event planning, and then have a history of doing community festivals and block parties in the neighborhood to really put this issue out there, not in a way that's around like sort of those silent witness exhibits or the clothesline project, which are both amazing kind of memorial projects, but in a way that's, let's talk about this, let's do something about it, let's face pain and you know, and like grill some stuff and be with each other. So how do we know that this is making any kind of impact? And I think that here are some outputs that we're seeing a lot of buy-in in the community, that, you know, over 150 people have gotten involved individually. We've gotten a lot of local businesses and local organizations engaged in this work. And we're seeing an increase in people's knowledge around domestic violence, people's ability and willingness to take action around domestic violence. And the other thing that we're seeing a lot of is an increase in community connectedness.
What I want to do is to present a kind of schematic of a website that we're building. And the name of the website is called Project Sakina, Stop Family Violence Now. So one of the things you can see there is that we are intending to focus not just on domestic violence, but on family violence more generally. There's three things that we're trying to achieve with it. One is to provide a platform for all of you to help you point people towards resources and help you communicate with each other. And another thing that we're trying to do is to provide a way for people who are new to the work, are trying to get involved, to find ways that they might get involved and help them to build teams in their local areas to continue with that work. Right now, we're parsing this issue of domestic violence in three parts. The first part we're calling Wake Up, and the Wake Up portion of the site is basically intended to educate. And so there's a model that starts with pre-contemplation, you're like not even thinking about it, to thinking about it, to preparing to change, and only at the fourth step do you get to change. The Wake Up portion of the site is intended to move them along to this place, and the Speak Up portion of the site is intended to focus particularly on that step, that last step of preparing to change. So now, when someone is in that stage, they're thinking about, well, if I were to speak up when I saw a friend being controlling with his significant other, how would I do that? For me, the PFP website has a campaign, and one of the things that's great about it is this is a way for an individual. He doesn't necessarily have to be connected to a larger collective. On their own, they can take a stand and speak and make a little video, and they're taking a step forward. The last portion of the site is called Team Up, but we're trying to make available the tools, some of the tools that Obama used during his campaign to enable people to make their own teams and then direct what their teams are going to do from there. The intention is to leverage the work that you're all doing, to build a path for people who have, for whatever reason, just stumbled across the issue. For Dar al Islam, the Project Sakina is our version of the way forward for us, and the website is one aspect of it.
We have to increase the awareness. And when an issue is complicated, you need many, many different people involved, because they bring in different perspectives, they bring in different competencies, they bring in different strengths, and they look at things from different dimensions. So unless you bring all of those players, you don't adequately address the issue. And the movement forward is all you want to look for. Well, for us, that moving us forward has to be our faith. And there has to be someone that facilitates that movement forward. So what Dar al Islam wants to do is to be that facilitator. But we have certain expertise, and we have certain commitments, and we can bring that to facilitate the work you all do, and to bring in the awareness to a larger group. So it has to be our own reliance on us, and it must be a reliance on our faith. Thank you very much.